So it's been a long time since Diesel released a fragrance that I actually enjoyed. Here we have an actual flanker of a classic fragrance from their lineup, and they have released many flankers of this. This one is called Sound of the Brave. I'm excited to give you my thoughts on this 2021 release, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin my video on Sound of the Brave by Diesel, and I tell you all about this fragrance, what it smells like, how it performs, any comparisons if I was able to make any, I do want to start things off by mentioning that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. Make sure to enable all notifications by clicking on the bell, and give this video a thumbs up if you take something of value from today's episode. So here we have a fragrance from Diesel called Sound of the Brave, and of course this one is very auditory inspired, I suppose, and yeah, it has a speaker illustration here on the sides, and this is actually on the sweeter side of things, which I was actually surprised by, because when you look at the note breakdown, it has lemon, juniper. What else does it have? It has amberwood, and so it has a lot of sweet grass being another accord that's utilized in the heart. So it had a lot of notes and accords that I wouldn't necessarily think would make this lean sweet. And then as soon as I sprayed it initially in the box, subsequently on a test strip, and then ultimately on my skin, I realized that this one actually does tend to go sweet in a few different ways, few different directions. In any case, I'm excited to give you my thoughts on the smell and really try to break it down for you. Let's go ahead and start things off with the presentation. Now, this fragrance does in fact open up with a nice amount of lemon. As soon as I sprayed it on, I got that bright burst of lemon in the opening, but then I also got something sweet lingering in the background. And my initial thought was coumarin or tonka bean. And so tonka bean, of course, is used in Versace Eros and Invictus Aqua, the original Invictus, many of the flankers. And so I just thought to myself, okay, there's a lot of tonka bean happening in here, with the addition of that lemon note in the opening, which is making it veer a little bit on the fresher side of things. But then the more that I wore it and the more that I smelled it, I started to realize that there's actually a little bit more going on in terms of the sweetness than just the tonka bean. And that's when I started sort of racking my brain, trying to find out what fragrance does this smell similar to. So I initially thought maybe the original Invictus, or maybe Invictus Extreme, I think it's called Extreme, and perhaps even Versace Eros, whichever concentration you want to mention. But the more and more that I smelled it, I thought to myself, wait a second, there's something slightly fruity happening in here in addition to the lemon, and I'm also getting a nice dose of creamy vanilla in the base. And that's when it hit me. This one actually reminds me of Ultramall by Jean Paul Gaultier. Now, of course, that fragrance, composed by Francis Kirkjohn, is a beautiful fragrance. There's actually a lot of pear in that fragrance. It's mostly pear and vanilla. It's a few years old now, and it's like the ultimate partying, clubbing type of a fragrance. And I feel like this does borrow some of the elements from Ultramall by Jean Paul Gaultier. And so its sweetness, I would say, is kind of on the same level, except Ultramall doesn't really open up fresh or citrusy. It kind of just fast forwards straight into that sweet vanilla, pear-driven heart and base, whereas this one takes a few extra minutes to sort of unwind, convey its fresh personality, and then it makes that transition into the sweeter side of things. Now, don't get me wrong. This one is actually sweet from the very start. So from the initial spray, you're going to get that vanilla or that amberwood. You're also going to get that tonka bean kind of a vibe, because there's most certainly coumarin in here. But you're also going to get a little bit of that freshness in the opening. In terms of juniper, you know, juniper has a bit of an astringent smell, and it's a smell that I also equate to the smell of cedarwood sometimes. And I don't get anything particularly woodsy or astringent from this fragrance, which is why I'm saying I don't get a whole lot of juniper. The amberwood is certainly convincing, and of course the lemon is certainly convincing. But if I were to add a few more notes to the note breakdown, of course I would add vanilla, I would add tonka bean, I might even add pear or like a fruity accord in the heart, just because I am getting a little bit of that because of the connection that I've established with Ultramall. But in the same way that Ultramall is a date night kind of a fragrance, this too would be a date night kind of a scent. I think this one is super appropriate for romantic evening, night out, if you're going to the club, if you're going to a bar, if you want to wear something that is a little bit on the sweeter side of things, you're not looking for something ultra professional, something a little bit more on the playful side of things. I think Sound of the Brave would fit that bill quite nicely. If you're looking for something casual, I think this would work casually as well. If you're looking for something that conveys unmatched class and elegance and sophistication and a posh, chic demeanor, there are many other fragrances, even from Diesel, that I think would work really, really well. And so with that being said, I think this scent is solid. I think it's a great fragrance. If you're a fan of fragrances like Invictus, Versace Eros, and then also, of course, Ultra Mall by Jean Paul Gaultier, definitely leans a little bit more on the casual and clubbing side of things, but nonetheless, I think it's a solid scent if you are a fan of some of those contemporary and modern sweet men's fragrances. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I don't think this is the most unique fragrance out there, just because I initially did make a few different comparisons, and I would also throw in there like Wanted by Azzaro. So there are a few other fragrances that I do personally feel like this smells similar to. Probably the closest comparison is Ultra Mall by Jean Paul Gaultier. But nevertheless, I do enjoy the smell because I'm also a huge fan of Ultra Mall, although I would probably say I do prefer Ultra Mall over this one. Longevity on this one, you can expect about 8 hours. In terms of the projection, it projected really well for the first hour to hour and a half of application. It didn't even start to sit closer to the skin until about that 6-hour mark. Versatility, I touched upon that a little bit. Clubbing, date night, casual, possibly not formal. You want something a little less sweet, a little more refined. This one is great for the colder weather, but I think you can pull this off in the spring as well. This one is masculine marketed, but I think it's unisex. If you are a woman, you're a fan of vanilla, tonka bean, both of which are used quite heavily in women's perfumes, check this one out. In terms of the presentation, some call it a little bit kitschy, and of course this presentation has been around for a very, very long time. Sound of the Brave is a little ambiguous. What is the Sound of the Brave? Is it a roar? I'm not really quite sure, but in any case, my final verdict on this fragrance is if you are tired of smelling like Versace Eros or Paco Rabanne Invictus because everybody is wearing those fragrances, you want something that is kind of fashioned around or modeled around a classic, that classic being Ultra Mall by Jean Paul Gaultier. Despite how recently it was released, I do think it's a classic, or it will become a classic very soon. I think this one is solid. Definitely leaning on the sweeter side of things. Great fragrance. Check it out if you haven't already done so. So there you have it, ladies and gents. Thank you for joining me. That was my review of Sound of the Brave by Diesel. If you enjoyed this review, or if you took something of value from this video, do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Make sure to enable all notifications by clicking on the bell. Give this video a thumbs up. Love you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.